somebody angry.
Anger points, Republican consultants' shorthand for hot-button issues, were the other central element of the direct mail arsenal. And for his candidates, Rove put the anger points together with a kind of battle plan he learned from Lee Atwater. Attacking, attacking, attacking. 50% of paid media should be devoted to attack. If we do not attack, we surrender control of the agenda.
If there's any single thing that defines a Rove campaign, it's smash-mouth politics. He goes after you hammer and tong. He attack, attack, attack is sort of the model that he used.
And in the mid-'80s, Rove found an anger point that could unite voters statewide: tort reform. To Rove, tort reform was a simple story. The elected state Supreme Court had been bought by wealthy Democratic personal injury lawyers.
Is justice for sale in Texas?
The story was pushed to the news magazine 60 Minutes.
The Wall Street Journal has called the decision of one Texas court a national embarrassment. The New York Times.
It was an enormously powerful piece in Texas. Rove was a part of the business effort that encouraged 60 Minutes, that fed them information. You couldn't have written a headline that was better than the 60 Minutes piece or more effective.
Rove capitalized on the story.
Justice Ted Z. Robertson once took $120,000 in campaign money from Clinton Mangus and then switched his vote back and forth in a crucial case involving Mangus. This year, Robertson's taken over $1 million in contributions from special interest lawyers.
He knew intuitively you had to have, as Mark Twain says, a devil for the crusade. And if this was the crusade, and in the context of a judicial race, of which no one really cares about, you had to demonize somebody. In this case, it was central casting. They were doing it to themselves.
And Rove's strategy had a bonus. If he shut down the trial lawyers, he would cut off their money to the Democrats.
Well, they're the financial backbone of the party, and if you put a pox on their money, you make life more difficult, extraordinarily more difficult.
Rove's pro-business candidates won 5 of the 6 open seats.
It was the harbinger of the beginning of the end of the liberal Supreme Court in Texas. And then Rove went on to, run all 9 of them, and they swept everybody out, and was a complete 100% turnover in the Supreme Court, entirely pretty much caused by Rove.
What Rove had done was to persuade traditionally conservative Texas Democrats to think of themselves as Republicans and to keep voting that way. And they did. Senators Phil Gramm, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, and most of the statewide ballot. But there was still some unfinished business.
Poor George.
It was a famous moment in Texas. The future Democratic governor mocking the vice president.
He was born with a silver foot in his mouth.
The pundits said she couldn't be beaten. But Karl Rove had a secret project he'd been working on for years.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
George W. Bush.
Let's make it official. I'm a candidate for governor of Texas.
I knew Karl was good, and those two coming together, Karl's sort of knowledge of the mechanics of it and all the different personalities and players in some of these big counties. And then when you added to that this extremely skilled candidate, it was a marriage made in heaven. It really was.
Karl Rove, the strategist, wanted to make sure they kept the election focused on just 4 issues: welfare reform, education reform, juvenile justice, and tort reform.
So you had this model of 4 issues. So whenever George Bush was asked in the governor's race about a 5th issue, or a 6th issue, or a 7th issue, he invariably stayed on message and moved back to these 4 issues. It was a marvelous exercise in restraint and in campaign focus.
I want to ask you about your experience and acceptance of personal responsibility in business.
Wayne, my business career is open for public scrutiny, and I'm proud of it. We ought to be discussing welfare reform, juvenile justice, education, ways to make Texas a better place for our children.
And very early on, Karl Rove did something that many other political operatives don't do, and it's it's really an element of why he is a unique figure in American political life. He understands that while other people look for the weakness in an opponent and exploit that, Rove has long looked at the strength of an opponent. In the case of Ann Richards running for governor, it was that she was tolerant and appealed to many constituencies, so you attack her as an advocate for the homosexuals' agenda.
Rove's East Texas campaign chairman, State Senator Bill Ratliff, accused Richards of hiring avowed and activist homosexuals to high state offices.
The issue of homosexuality was very much an issue. It was very much involved in that campaign.
Rove released a statement distancing the Bush campaign from Senator Ratliff's comments.
But in every case, what I found was a duplication of the exact pattern of every Rove race. That Rove's opponent is attacked often by a surrogate or anonymous group, whisper campaigns, direct mail pieces, or other kinds of personal attacks in a way that Rove can't be directly, clearly seen with his fingerprints, but that Rove's candidate benefits from.
In the end, the thoroughness of the Rove plan, anger, focused issues, attack, proved too much for Ann Richards. In 1994, George W. Bush won handily.
You know, the interesting thing about being a governor of Texas or California, Florida or New York, that the day after you're elected, people start talking about you being president.
And so it was with Texas Governor George W. Bush. But Rove knew Bush had to turn politics into policy. He needed to govern, to deliver on those issues. To do so, he made peace with the Democrats. Rove's 4 issues became law. And in 1998, George Bush was re-elected.
The basic appeal was that we're going to keep the damn government out of your hair and we're going to keep it out of your wallet. And that message was resonated very clearly.
I agree with that assessment.
One area where people have constantly misunderstood Bush is to assume that he is really a moderate, which he's not. He's a conservative. His principles are conservatives. His convictions are conservatives.
When he left, 28 out of 28 state offices were held by Republicans, and there wasn't a single elected Democrat left in the state, statewide.
They were a formidable team, a partnership surely on its way to the presidency. But right from the beginning of the campaign, they ran into trouble. They would have to use everything they had learned together.
Watch out. The McCain campaign came out of the blue at Karl. McCain's outspokenness, his toughness, he didn't like the religious right. He was playing cards that within the Republican constituency would have been fatal to play.
The pro-life group in Washington has turned a cause into a business and are opposed to my trying to clean up campaign finance reform.
But Rove tried to lighten the mood.
Everybody make a snowball, and on the count of 3, throw it.
People think of him as the Darth Vader. Not true at all. He's always smiling. He's the merry prankster.
But it didn't help, and McCain won.
We got our ass kicked. We got humbled. We got put on our knees in the snows, the cold snows of New Hampshire.
I knew we were going to lose. I just didn't know it was by 19 points. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But Rove mocked McCain's victory.
Yeah, just like Pat Buchanan was the nominee in '96. He won. What did he do in Iowa? He came in 5th behind Gary Bauer, Alan Keyes, and Steve Forbes, and barely ahead of Orrin Hatch. In your perverted little mind.
The next primary was South Carolina, and they played really hard.
We got tougher.